Alright, I think it's time I owe you a better video doing this. If you watched a video I did a couple months back, or, well, I guess it was over a few months back, it's called Hi, I'm Avery. Um, that video was to explain. The only reason I did that video is essentially I didn't want to keep using my dead name as my channel name. And so I felt like it was important to make that video. But I felt like that video, you could tell I was very nervous in front of the camera. I'm not usually that nervous in front of the camera. I have issues like in videos where, I'll be honest, I don't always look at the camera. Even right now, you can kind of see me looking around the room and stuff. That is just because I have ADHD. There's not really much I can do about it. I just kind of go with the flow. I really just do videos for fun, anyways. I feel like it'd be different if I wasn't doing videos for fun, but that is the honest truth of why I do these things. Um, so I just want to explain that, but I want to do a video better explaining. Yes, I am trans, male to female, and some of the details. I'm not going to go too much into my personal life because it's personal. But I want to do a better video explaining it. Um, because at the end of the day, I owe it to my viewers. Honesty, transparency, all those things. Um, Basically, yeah, I am trans male to female. I came out a few months ago. I am still working on a lot of the things. So if you see shifts in how I look or act or dress in videos, that is just because I'm still exploring parts of myself that had been denied to me for so long of my life. And I'm finally given the ability to explore that. And it's not been easy. Um, I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but yeah. Um, and also, I should state a lot of trans people get in their comments, well, about tips or advice. I recommend don't ask me for tips and advice. Not because I'm not open to giving them. I do like helping people, right? But am I really the best at giving advice when I'm still figuring it out myself? Probably not. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. Like, if you want to ask me for questions, I guess go ahead. But if I don't give you the best advice, just understand that's why. So, um, I guess I should explain my story a little bit. Um, I've kind of always expected something was off about me for years of my life. I wasn't sure what that was. Um, I never quite fit in really anywhere when I was younger. And my, I think some of these things in my life I should have seen sooner, but I am an amputee. I went through a very, I'm not gonna go into the whole story, but I went through a very serious medical condition with my leg, with the tumor in the back of my knee, all that stuff. And that was about 7, 8 years out of my life. I was in and out of hospitals. By the time I was 13 years old, is when they finally took my leg. So, I'm 22 now, turning 23 this year. So we're roughly coming about 10 years of that, but there's still like, wow, I'm still at the point where I've had a leg longer than I've not had one, but eventually that will become different as time goes on. I don't have prosthetic just because the way parts of it worked out. I just not able to have one this whole thing. I don't really want to go into that part of the story because it's not important to the video. But I'm saying all this is like some of these signs that trans people see when they're younger. I really didn't see. Some of it I saw when I was younger. I had female cousins that I would hang out with more. I had more fun hanging out with them. We'd play games, and I like more feminine things. But I was also kind of told by adults that, hey, you can't sit that way. That's how a girl sits. You can't say the word cute. And some of that was for humor, but you can tell that a lot of the people would say that. They may say that as a joke, but it's also probably because they were raised that way too. And it always made me feel uncomfortable, but I never really knew why. And then, I really grew a battle with my parents. I was raised in religion. Religion never did me right in the sense that I am a person who likes books, I like music, I like art, and if you know anything about, especially like right wing American Christian religion, I mean, I'm sure it's other parts of the world too, but like from my experience, anyways, they really restrict what you can watch. Like my dad wouldn't let me watch Revenge of the Sith because it was PG-13. He was very much not letting me watch PG-13, and then he loosened up and let me watch other things. I was about 16, 17, or 15, 14, something like that. Whenever Stranger Things came out, I wasn't allowed to watch that, and I ended up sneaking it, and I started growing this rebellious stage, and that led me to moments with my parents where they just didn't understand. And I had a friend that we became kind of close, and I always knew I liked girls, and we talked about girls, but I just thought I was a horny guy, in my teenage years, and really that was not true. I was not a horny guy. You know, I do identify as ace. I don't know what label I put on it. I don't really think about it like that. So I don't tend to think about it like that, but you know, and I think the way he felt about girls and the way I felt about girls was different because he was not ace, so he actually was a horny guy, and then, but he was really my only close friend at the time, and then I kind of was like, okay. And then I won't go into more details about this just for the sake of their transparency and privacy. I don't really have space to share this, but I'm going to share this part of it just because it's part of the story, but I'm not, but I think the way I'm going to say it is good enough that they won't care. Basically, I had a family member, not going to say who came out to my parents as trans, but on the opposite side, they're trans male. And my parents are more right wing Christian evangelicals. They're not really the best at that. They were not nice. And, certain family members suffer from mental illness and other things. So the way they react to things isn't always the greatest and can sometimes be traumatic. So when I saw that, I was upset. There were a lot of families spreading rumors about them and them being gay and other things, and it just really made me uncomfortable and grossed out, and I really thought to myself, well, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that person. And so I started doing research into the LGBTQ community because frankly I wasn't allowed to even think about that or even ask questions about that, and if I was ashamed because my parents taught me that that was sinful and that was wrong, and they seemed to still believe that, and in very hurtful, fucked up ways. Most of my father's in that side of things. I don't want to go much into more detail about that. My relationship with them is private, you know what I'm saying? But it's not always great. And once I started doing research, as a teenager, going on these apps to talk to different people and ask questions, I realized I like girls, and because there was a part of my life where I thought, could I be like bi? Do I like men? And I thought about experimenting, and not like experimenting being sexually. I am ace, like I said, but more so like just trying a relationship with a guy, and then I just realized. I feel like this is a good metric. I mean, this isn't for everybody, but this is something you should think about. If you are debating whether you're attracted to another gender, try to think in your mind, could you be with that gender? And in your mind, if you're going, I can't imagine myself being long term with that other gender, then you're just not attracted to that other gender. Like I think a lot of people confuse, hey, I can see that person is attractive or cute or whatever, or pretty or handsome or whatever. And they confuse that with attraction. That's not attraction. You can think somebody is, notice the qualities of somebody, but also understand that you're just not attracted to somebody like that. That is basically what I went through with that. And it, and I'm satisfied with that answer. So I never really dated a guy, but I always kind of questioned that in the back of my mind, but I realized over time I'm just not attracted to girls. But then it was like really when I started talking to lesbian women and not just trans women, I went, "Oh, I'm a lesbian. I don't like any other." That was why that, and then it was like, oh, and realizing that my family member was trans on the opposite side of things, I was trans on the opposite side, not a female, and I like women. And that was a very interesting moment in my life. But I probably realized that about 16, 17. And my friend I talked to, I told him, hey, I've been on these dating apps, or not dating apps, like chatting apps, but I guess you could date on them. And I told him what I was feeling, and he was like, well, if you ever, I was thinking, hey, I might be trans, and he said, well, if you are trans, I just won't accept you. So I kept kind of brushing it aside. I've talked to other family members. They didn't come out and say that, but I kind of dropped hints. I was like, I don't think I'm just a guy who likes girls. And they're like, I don't know. You're just a guy who likes girls. You're overthinking it. And then I went through a lot of depression because in my mind too, one of the things that really hurt me is how do I transition? Not like, first of all, I don't know how, right? And here's the reality: I still don't know how. There's no correct way to do this. Please do not try to question in your mind. There's a correct way to do this. There really is not. Um, you know, but one of the things I knew was like, oh, I want to do hormones, maybe do surgery. I'm not so certain about surgery at this moment, but I'll change my mind one day maybe. But I wanted to transition. I knew that in the back of my mind, even though I kept kind of trying to push it down. And I really was afraid of that because I'm not in a situation still at this moment to live on my own. And so it felt unsafe to come out because the way family members or friends had talked to me about this stuff, there wasn't really people I could talk to about that. Yeah, there were people online I could talk to, but an inner circle of friends or loving partners I had or things like that. So I was in this awkward situation where with that, and so when I grew into my 20s, I started to feel more fierce about LGBTQ issues and lean more progressive in politics because I don't know, something about seeing that right at the Capitol and shit on January 6th and all these things. It really made me realize that I'd just been raised the wrong way. Not that my parents were awful people, but, some of them had more racist beliefs. And I say my parents, but I also mean grandparents, other people, but they have more racist beliefs. They have more hateful worldviews that I don't want to have because they're just the wrong worldviews to have. And I think part of it is that maybe they don't realize some of that, but I did. I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I told myself no. And I've gotten more vocal about it, and some of them don't like that. But at the end of the day, I stand up not just for me, but for other people. And in a lot of that, I was able to learn more and discover more. So, and so one day I just had it with these family members, to say the least. And I realized they're never gonna respect me. They said some shit to me that I'm not gonna go into, but it still stings because they can apologize, but I know they meant it. They are pretty much in my mind we're family because we're blood related, but not in the way that I would like. I'm not going to go into much detail more than that. But um, through that, I realized I need to come out. And it may not work out, but it was better than keeping rage in and make. And I also thought it would help them understand, like, this is why I'm vocal about these things. Because when you talk shit about these people, you're talking shit about me, and you don't realize you're talking shit about me. I don't think they still make the dots in their head. So they're kind of assholes. Um, but in the end, I felt a lot more free once I did. And also through that, I was able to understand that, because I live in the state of California, I'm not going to say much more than that, but I have Medi-Cal. I could do transition on my own insurance, and that's been a very scary thing. So if you want to know, I am trying to get on hormones. It is not been easy. I had to take off my parents' insurance, get on my own insurance, and go through all that process. Lots of doctor visits, other things. It's been complicated, but was able to do that. And so I'm not there. I haven't started anything yet. I see a doctor next week. Maybe I'll update you about that in a video at some point. But yeah, I finally realized, okay. And then, I talked to coworkers about this at work, about feelings like that, because these are people I trust, make connections with, like relationships, not like dating, but, like friendships and things like that. That I think a few of them will be long lasting connections with people. And they were supportive, and it made me realize too that in a lot of ways, a lot of the things that I was feeling, I was not not as isolated as I thought, basically. And through that, I was able to go through all that. And so I've been out since probably October, November, December, something like that. Something like that. I think it must have been, maybe it's September. I don't know, but it's been like 4 months, right? It's not been the longest time, but I've been able to do that. As if you see my videos, in the past, I used to have very short hair for years of my life. My mom would take care of my haircuts. She'd get me these buzz cuts. And I've never been the person to really know what to do with my hair because, well, I just never had the freedom to do with what I wanted with my hair. Great advice if you have one near you. What I did with my hair is essentially I didn't know what to do with my hair. And so what I did is I went up to a Supercuts near me. And I asked, and I just straight up told the lady, just genuinely, I don't know what to do with my hair. I want a more feminine look. I'm trans male to female. Now I will say maybe you live in an area where there aren't a lot of people who will accept that. So, so be careful about that. But I would advise if you're able to do that and you feel comfortable going to your hairdresser and telling them that, go ahead. Because I told this lady that, and now every time I go in there, she cuts my hair. And she told me she shaped it the way I want, and now I love my hair. Like it's not my ideal hair. I've always wanted like long, thick hair, but it looks more feminine. It's grown out. I'm happy with it. And what's really cool is Supercuts does have a subscription service where you can pay I pay like $25 a month, something like that, and they cut my hair to like a subscription service. I can go in as many times and get my hair cut. So it's really wonderful. I actually love that about their service. So I think if you have a service like that near you, go use it because it's wonderful. I mean, the lady I was talking to, she gives me advice every time I go in. She's like, one time she was like, well, come in like 3 times a month, 2 to 3 times a month, and then now she's like, make the visits a little bit fewer, and that's what I've been doing. I do need to go back probably later this month, but that's the one thing she's been helping me with, and it's just been really nice because I've been able to have someone who doesn't need to know my full life story, but is willing to help me. And so yeah, and you do, and I feel like if you are transitioning male to female, you do want hair that is more feminine, and but also I feel like you don't have to be the most idealized feminine. Be happy being you. Like, and I look at my drawers, and I didn't really change that many clothes I wear. The main thing I changed was pants. I used to wear these really ugly sweatpants, and now I wear like jeans. But my shirts, a lot of them are just the same shirts I've been wearing for years. Because I'm a nerd, I like nerdy t-shirts. Like, look, I'm wearing a Smiling Friends t-shirt. I wear rock and roll t-shirts, whatever makes me happy. Like, the thing is, I think people overestimate, like, they have to change everything about them. To be trans, you don't have to change everything about you. You can just be the same person you are because that's what you are. The only thing that's different is like, well, I guess if you're trans, you maybe want to do makeup, or I do makeup, right? Or you want a more feminine hair, or you want to change your clothes just a little bit. Whatever it is that makes you comfortable and happy, then do that. But at the end of the day, I have not changed who I am. I'm still the same person. And I think everyone who's known me has recognized that. I think, maybe they've noticed I'm a happier person than I was before, which is good. I want people to, see that. But other than that, they're not seeing like a different person. And that's the thing, it may become a shock for people. Like, I've had people who really had a hard time with my name. Um, you know, and so the name change gets a little difficult, but it is a thing. You change your name, you change your identity, things like that. It takes time for people to do that. Also, I think you just need to like be understanding that if people make mistakes, it's not really worth fighting about. Like, people mess up my name, and it's not out of malice or ill intent. In some cases, it is, but like most of the time, it's not, and it ain't worth fighting for them about. Or like for me, I live in California, but I live in more of a red area, California, and so I deal with a lot of older folks at work that they're just gonna call me more masculine pronouns. They're not gonna, say more feminine ones, and that's fine. I have Trump supporters that I know are Trump supporters because they wear the socks, the shirt, the pants like it's bad. But they come in to watch a movie. I'm not going to sit there and explain to them that. They may notice that my name's different and be like, oh, okay, we just call them that. Whatever. You don't need to explain to everybody who you are. You just need to live your life and be happy. Or like, I'll be honest, one of the things that I was most scared of is the restroom. I just started using the restroom. That's it. It feels a little awkward at first because you're always wondering, or like somebody gonna say something to me. I always feel awkward around children in the restroom because, I never know if a kid's gonna point me out or say some shit, and the parents can be like, "What are they doing here?" But at the end of the day, most people do not. You just look like you belong there. That is the same advice I give for clothes shopping. One thing I was very afraid of too for a while was clothes shopping, because I was like, am I going to look like an outcast here? I'm going in by myself, whatever. And here's the reality. Someone said it best to me, and this has stuck with me. Just look like you belong there, and nobody will bother you. And it's really true. So I've been, I shop at Ross and other places, like things like that. And I buy my clothes, and it's not a problem. I would avoid places like Target and Walmart, some other places with that. But if that's what you feel comfortable with, go ahead. But I go to places like Ross or other more niche places because you're a little more free to look, and you get cheaper deals on clothes. But that's what I do. But just be happy. And so that is my story. Essentially, it's still growing and developing, as really we always are as people, if you think about it. So I just want to explain that better in a video, because I did put out an old video, like I said, explain this a few months back, but I feel like I didn't go into detail because I was still very nervous about all of this, but I wanted to explain all that. So yeah, and I also think you can now with more content, you're gonna understand why, I talk a lot about like religious themes and ideas that make me angry in videos, and maybe it doesn't always relate to the video. Well, I would say it does relate to the video, but maybe I'll go in a little bit more detail. But that's just because who I am as a person and where I was raised, that I think about these things. And so, yeah, I have a lot of things like that going on in my life. I just want people to know that they're not alone. So, yeah. Let me know your thoughts, like, share, and subscribe.